But so at the age of 6, I tried out for this hockey team, and in those days, back in 1967, there was one team, and that was 11-year-old kids, and I made this team. And I played on this team for 5 years, 6 years old, 7 years old. And for those of you who follow hockey and understand, the reason I tucked my sweater in was because at the age of 6, I got this sweater, I made the team, and the sweater was so long it came down over my knees. And my dad said, "You look so small, you look out of place." I mean, I was 6 years old looking at him going, yeah, you're right. And so he tucked my sweater in. And so I did that throughout my whole career, and it became a ritual for me, and that's how that came about. But at the age of 11 on that same team, I scored 400 goals that year on that team. And that year they had this big dinner. And quite honestly, I was a very shy child. And they had this big dinner in my hometown. 500 people were going. And the person organizing the dinner asked if I would speak. And of course my dad said, "Yeah, we'd love to." Now, I'm the same kid who went to school and was scared to talk in front of the class, in front of my roommates. And so I got a chance to go down. I got an afternoon off school. I got a new brown suit and went down, and I met my idol, Gordie Howe. And I think for me, that was the first time I learned about being a celebrity, because as kids, we have this dream of meeting our idols. And we all have idols. We all have role models. And for me, Gordie Howe was bigger and better and nicer than I could have ever imagined. And so I had a wonderful 2 hours with him. We took all these pictures, got to meet Gordie Howe. And they came to me and they said, "Listen, Wayne," now I was 10 years old, "you don't have to speak tonight." And I went, "Oh, that's really good." I'm really nervous. They had Gordie Howe there and Joe Theismann and a bunch of other speakers. And so somebody forgot to tell the Master of Ceremonies. And at 10 years old, they announced, "And from Brantford," and et cetera, Wayne Gretzky. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I was sitting beside Gordie Howe, and he said to me, "Just get up there and tell them you're lost without your skates and your hockey stick." And I said, "Okay, that's exactly what I'm going to say." And I got up there and I just said, while I was crying, "Thank you," and sat down. And that was my introduction to public speaking. But from there, I continued my hockey career, although I still wanted to play baseball. And at the age of 14, I moved away from home. And a lot of people who have followed my career and those who know me think that I left home to pursue a hockey career. But unfortunately, I left home for political reasons and reasons that were not really good. And it's tough when you're 14 years old and you move away from home. I had 3 brothers and a sister. And my life became very intriguing. From there, at the age of 17, I decided to become a professional hockey player. My kids tell me daily that if they get offered a professional contract at 17, they're not going to finish school either. And I said, well, if you get an offer in a professional contract at 17, you can do whatever you want. But the one thing that my parents really preached was my education. And I was fortunate enough that I was God-gifted and that the good Lord gave me a special talent to become a professional athlete. So from there, I decided, okay, this is great. I'm going to become a professional hockey player. And after, as we say, grade 11, I decided to move on in my career. I got this phone call from a gentleman who said, "Listen, I'd really like to sign you." And I follow sports really closely. And I said, "Okay, yeah, where?" He said, "Well, I'd like to fly you to Vancouver." And at that time, they had this rival league called the WHA, which was World Hockey Association. I said, "Great, I'd love to go." But I said, "Listen, Vancouver, they don't have a hockey team, do they, in the WHA?" He said, "No, but I want you to come to my house." So my dad and I, my mother, we flew out to Vancouver. And he picked us up in this brown Rolls Royce. And it was really interesting because, as I said, my dad was a blue-collar guy, very hard-working. He spent 35 years working for Bell Canada. And he's very proud of the fact that the telephone was invented in our hometown, Brantford, Ontario. contrary to a lot of the American belief in Boston. And we were driving from the airport, we were driving to his house to talk about my future, and his Rolls Royce broke down. So in those days there wasn't a lot of cellular phones or car phones, and he pulls this car phone out and he phones home and he says, I got everything taken care of. And this guy comes with another Rolls Royce. We pull into this Rolls Royce and we start driving again, and that car breaks down. And he turns to my dad, and a Rolls Royce is about $150,000, and he turns to my dad and he said, listen, Walter, don't ever buy a Rolls Royce. And my dad said, I don't think you ever have to worry about that. So I decided I'd turn pro, and then after 2 months of playing for this man, I was traded. So that's how my career started. I was sold within 2 months. So I went to Edmonton, one of the greatest experiences of my life, going to Edmonton, and that's where I really learned what being a professional athlete was all about. Because after a couple of years, I was called in on the carpet, sort of, and they said, we'd really like you to be captain of our hockey team. And I said, well, what does a captain have to do? What are the responsibilities of a captain? Because when you're 22 years old, you think you know everything, but believe me, you don't know anything. And they said, well, you got to take care of the players, you got to take care of your teammates, and if the wives got problems, you got to talk to them. And I said, wives? I said, I'm 22 years old and single. I don't really want to worry about other guys' wives. 31, 32-year-old players. So there was the first time where I really understood the relationship between professional sports and the real world, in a sense that how many times have you walked into your office and walked into your job and you sit down and you all look at each other and you're waiting for your female or your male boss to walk in and think, I hope they're in a good mood today. And that was the first time that I got this coalition between sports and the real world. So each and every day I used to sit there and think, oh my goodness, who's in trouble today? Tell them I'm not there. I'm talking. And so from that point of view, it was wonderful. And then I learned, which was wonderful, the great responsibility, and I'm very proud of the National Hockey League, that each and every guy has, not only as a player and as an athlete, but our responsibility to that community as far as charity work goes. And I say that because in the real world, in the business world, in the everyday life, it takes a real tough situation for people to say, you know what, my son has Down syndrome, or I have a friend that's son has lost their eyesight, and that's when everyone says, okay, I'm going to jump in and get involved with that charity. But professional sports gives us an opportunity to jump in and get involved with charities and communities to help less fortunate people. And then especially in this day and age when you see so many bad things about professional athletes, drinking and driving, or spousal abuse, but there's so many good things that professional athletes do that don't go recognized and don't get the recognition that they should get. And in the real world, there's so many people that become big brothers or foster parents or adopt children or help charities, whether it's through work or through donating money, and that's what makes the world work. And so my days in Edmonton were really wonderful. We were a team of kids. We happened to win 4 championships. I got engaged, and my wife says to me, now listen, you probably win another 5 or 6 championships here, but maybe it's time for a change. And so I was sold again. And I was sold to LA. And thank you. And it was a whole new world for me, because in Canada, wherever you go and whatever you talk about, hockey has to be involved in the conversation. And when I came to LA, wow, what a difference. The only ice you could find was in a Diet Coke. And so when I came here, I said, okay, the good Lord has kind of mapped out my life, and I have a mission here. We got to figure out a way to make hockey work. And so my years and my time in LA at the beginning were so intriguing to get people involved, to change the image of our sport. The image of our sport, although Marty set us back a couple bits, my good friend, but the image of our sport here was like WWF, and I would say to people, our sport is an art. It really is a great game, and I'm so proud of the fact now that so many parents and so many kids have said, listen, I really love the sport, I want to be part of the game of hockey, and I want to participate. And so our sport now has expanded so much in not only California, but in Arizona, Texas, Florida, and we're very proud of the National Hockey League, and not only of the league itself, but of all our players who work diligently in their areas to help sell our game. So I had a wonderful experience in California. I was, as I tell people, I was this close to a Stanley Cup, and that was a curved stick. And from here, it was one of the greatest experiences I had, but it goes back to when I was 6 years old. You have to set your dreams, and you have to have your goals set high. And nobody can tell you what you can do or what you can't do. I said to a friend the other day, I said, do you ever stop and think in track and field and swimming how every 4 years the records get better and better? And he said, yeah, steroids. And I said, no, not steroids. I said, because every year they get better and better. And then if you look at history and you look at horses and you look at race horses, in 1972, Secretariat goes down as one of the greatest athletes who ever lived and one of the greatest horses who ever lived. And he still holds the record for the fastest Kentucky Derby. And that was in 1972, I believe. And I said to my friend, I said, but do you understand why since 72, track and field and swimming and high jumping, we get better all the time? I said, it's not because we train harder or horses train differently, but it's because your mind can only take you to a level that you believe you can go to as a human being. And a horse doesn't have that thought. And as people, we can go to any level we want to go. So if you're 6 years old and your dream and your goal and you set it forth, nobody can step in that way if you believe in that. Believe me, I'm a young guy who grew up in a small town who just loved to play hockey. And I had a dream and I had a vision of one day playing in the National Hockey League and being part of something very special. Now, as a parent, I have 4 kids, 4 healthy children, and they have different dreams. And it's interesting now that when you are a professional athlete and people come up to you and say, you know, my daughter or my son really idolizes you. And we kind of accept that responsibility, but sometimes we don't really understand it. And then when you become a parent and my kids are there and they say, Daddy, I love Michael Jordan, or Daddy, I love Tiger Woods, that's when you really understand the impact that professional sports and celebrities have towards kids. And so now as a parent, I'm really excited. I'm raising 4 healthy children. And our goal and our dream is like probably all of you, that your kids can enjoy their life and go on to college, do the best they can and be as successful as they can.